Ethan Miller adjusted the strap of his backpack and hesitated at the threshold of the small house, buzzing with chatter and laughter. The evening had started casually, a few friends gathering after midterms, but the energy inside the rooms was different somehow, tighter, warmer, almost electric. He wasn't normally drawn to crowded spaces, yet tonight, something had nudged him here, an unspoken curiosity he could hardly name. His fingers brushed against the edge of the doorframe as he scanned the living room, feeling the thrum of conversations pulse through the air. Cameron Hayes leaned casually against the wall near the kitchen, a half-smile playing at the corner of his lips. Ethan's heart thumped unevenly. Cameron, his cousin, was not just familiar, he carried an easy confidence that contrasted sharply with Ethan's quiet caution. Cameron's laugh drew Ethan's attention repeatedly, effortless and smooth, and though he tried to rationalize it, he found himself watching, studying the way Cameron's movements seemed to command the room without effort. There was a memory of childhood summers when Cameron had seemed larger than life, almost untouchable, but tonight the lines felt different, closer, more personal. A friend approached Ethan, handing him a drink. He nodded in thanks but barely noticed, his mind occupied with glances toward Cameron. The conversation around him became a blur of words, laughter, and clinking glasses. A faint smile tugged at Ethan's lips when Cameron finally caught his eye, a silent acknowledgement that lingered just long enough to unsettle him. It was a fleeting moment, yet loaded with weight that Ethan couldn't dismiss. The night progressed, voices overlapping, music humming softly in the background. Ethan found himself drifting toward the kitchen, ostensibly to refill his drink, but really to escape the crowd. Cameron appeared beside him, leaning slightly closer than necessary, his presence warm and immediate. "Want me to drive you home?" Cameron asked casually, but there was a peculiar weight to the offer. His voice was steady, smooth, but underneath lingered a subtle note, an invitation Ethan couldn't quite place. Ethan blinked, caught off guard. I thought I'd call a ride," he muttered, realizing his hesitation sounded more nervous than intended. Cameron's half-smile widened just slightly, teasing but not mocking. "It's late. I don't mind. Besides," he added, tilting his head toward Ethan, "I enjoy talking to you. Quiet time, away from all this." His gesture toward the noisy room made the offer feel intimate, almost protective. Ethan swallowed hard, sensing both comfort and danger in the suggestion. As they stepped outside into the crisp night air, Ethan noticed how different Cameron seemed out here, less performative, more grounded. The streetlights cast long, shifting shadows across the pavement, and the quietness of the evening allowed for thoughts that the crowded rooms had drowned. Ethan followed Cameron toward the car, feeling a mixture of anticipation and unease. Once inside, the engine hummed softly, filling the car with a gentle background noise that made the conversation easier to begin yet impossible to ignore. Cameron adjusted the rearview mirror, then glanced at Ethan, who was now acutely aware of the closeness, the subtle warmth of shared space. "It's been a while since we've had a moment like this," Cameron said, voice low, steady. "Just the two of us." Ethan hesitated, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. "Yeah. I guess we haven't really talked much in years," he admitted, the words sounding almost foreign to him. There was a strange intimacy in the acknowledgement, a reminder of shared history yet tinged with something unspoken. Cameron nodded, eyes briefly meeting Ethan's before returning to the road. "I remember summers at Grandma's," he said softly. "Running through the yard, always trying to beat you to the treehouse. You were stubborn, you know that." Ethan let out a quiet laugh, a nervous, genuine sound. "You were always faster, though. I never stood a chance." There was a warmth in the memory, a bridge back to innocence, yet it carried an unspoken tension, a subtle realization that time had changed more than just their ages. The ride continued in near silence, punctuated only by the hum of the engine and the occasional turn of tires against asphalt. Ethan found his thoughts drifting, circling around Cameron's presence in ways that startled him. There was a complexity to his cousin he hadn't noticed before, an allure that felt new and, at the same time, familiar. Cameron spoke again, quieter this time. "You ever think about how we've changed? Not just grown up, but the way we see things, feel things?" The question hung in the air, light yet loaded, inviting reflection without pressing for an answer. Ethan's pulse quickened. He realized the ride wasn't just a physical journey, but one toward thoughts he hadn't allowed himself before. I guess, Ethan said cautiously, but I try not to overthink it. He knew he was lying to himself. Thoughts of Cameron's gaze, the casual warmth of his voice, even the tilt of his shoulder as he shifted in the driver's seat, all of it had lodged in Ethan's mind, unwelcome yet insistent. The conversation meandered into lighter topics, college, professors, mutual friends, but every sentence carried a subtle weight, every laugh and sigh layered with unspoken meaning. Cameron had a way of filling the space without forcing it, and Ethan found himself drawn in, simultaneously nervous and exhilarated. The car felt smaller, the night longer, the world outside irrelevant. As they approached Ethan Street, Cameron slowed the car, glancing at him once more. I'm glad I offered, he said quietly. Tonight, it felt good to talk. Ethan nodded, words failing him. He realized then that the evening had changed something, an awareness, a tension, a question that refused easy answers. Cameron's smile lingered, enigmatic and unthreatening, yet it carried an unspoken promise. The car came to a stop outside Ethan's house. Silence filled the space for a moment, heavy with things left unsaid. Ethan stepped out, his heart still racing, the night air sharper against his skin. Cameron gave a small nod, a silent acknowledgement of what had passed in the car. Ethan watched as his cousin drove away, the taillights fading into the darkness, leaving him with a swirl of emotions he didn't fully understand. He stood on the porch for a long moment, hands gripping the railing, replaying snippets of conversation, gestures, the softness of Cameron's voice. Something had shifted, something subtle, profound, and utterly disorienting. And as he finally closed the door behind him, Ethan knew one thing for certain: tonight was far from over, at least in his mind. The hum of the city had quieted to a low pulse by the time Ethan Ross set his laptop aside. The glow from the screen lingered on his face, casting faint shadows beneath his tired eyes. Another sleepless night. The clock on the wall blinked 11:57 p.m. outside his apartment. The corridor was silent except for the dull hum of the elevator's engine 2 floors down. Ethan pulled on a jacket, more for something to do than for warmth, and decided to go downstairs for a coffee. The air in the lobby always smelled faintly of cleaning polish and rain, a scent that reminded him of calm, deliberate nights. But tonight, something was different. Behind the reception desk stood a man Ethan had never seen before. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and wore the standard dark uniform of the building's security staff. Yet there was nothing standard about the way he carried himself, relaxed, almost meditative, as though the silence belonged to him. His name tag read Liam Hayes. Liam looked up from the monitor as Ethan approached. Couldn't sleep. His voice was low, unhurried. Ethan hesitated, surprised by the warmth in his tone. Something like that. New shift. First week, Liam said, offering a faint smile. You're the designer, right? Apartment 14B. Ethan blinked. You know the residents? Just the names, Liam replied. It's part of the job. Helps if something happens at night. Ethan nodded, studying him for a moment. Liam's eyes were a deep, unguarded brown, the kind that looked directly at you but never made you uncomfortable. Ethan found himself holding the gaze a little too long. He looked away and walked toward the coffee machine near the window. The night outside was soaked in drizzle. Reflections of streetlights trembled across the glass. Ethan stirred his drink slowly, aware that Liam had resumed watching the monitors. Yet he could feel a quiet attention still fixed on him, like an unspoken curiosity floating between them. Doesn't it get lonely down here? Ethan asked after a while. Liam turned, his expression thoughtful. Sometimes. But I like the quiet. It gives me time to think. About what? He shrugged lightly. Everything and nothing. How people live stacked above each other, all their stories separated by concrete and locks. Strange, isn't it? Ethan smiled. That's a poetic way to describe an apartment complex. I used to write poetry, Liam said, as if confessing something private. A long time ago. The words lingered longer than they should have. Ethan leaned against the counter, coffee forgotten. What made you stop? Liam's gaze returned to the monitors. Life. Responsibility. Bills. Then, almost softly, but I still think in line sometimes. It's a habit you don't lose. There was no hint of pretension in his tone. Just quiet honesty. Ethan admired that. He wasn't sure why the conversation felt heavier than small talk, but he didn't want it to end. From somewhere above, a door slammed faintly. Both of them looked up, then back at each other. For a moment, it felt as if they were the only two people awake in the world. Ethan checked the time, 12:20 a.m. He should have gone back upstairs, but something anchored him there. You said you liked the quiet, he said, setting his empty cup down. I think I do too, sometimes. Liam nodded. Most people avoid it. You'd be surprised how many residents wander in here at night just to fill the silence. Maybe I'm one of them, Ethan said. The line came out softer than intended. Liam's eyes flickered with amusement. Then you're welcome company. The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was charged, deliberate. Ethan could hear the faint tick of the wall clock, the rhythmic drip from somewhere behind the reception desk. Finally, Liam broke it. If you ever need air, there's a rooftop garden. Technically closed at night, but it's quiet. Beautiful, too. You can see the river lights from there. Ethan raised an eyebrow. You're offering me restricted access. Liam's mouth curved into a small smile. I trust you won't cause trouble. Something in his voice, steady, confident, kind, made Ethan's chest tighten. He hadn't felt that tone in a long time. Not from Michael, whose voice was always filtered through deadlines and calls. Not from anyone. I'll hold you to that, Ethan said, almost whispering. Liam retrieved a set of keys, moving toward the elevator. Come on. Just for a minute. No one checks the cameras up there after midnight. Ethan hesitated at the edge of reason. He should have gone back upstairs, to the safety of his apartment, to the life he'd built and the relationship he was supposed to maintain. But curiosity, no, connection, pulled him forward. They stepped into the elevator. The hum of machinery filled the enclosed space. Liam stood beside him, silent, composed. The faint scent of rain on his jacket mingled with the metallic air. Ethan's reflection in the elevator door looked almost like a stranger, awake, alert, alive. When the doors opened, a breeze slipped through. The rooftop stretched out beneath a veil of mist. The city glittered below, its streets glistening with rain. The garden lights cast soft halos across the wet stone. Liam walked ahead, hands in his pockets. This is my favorite hour, he said quietly. The world feels honest when everyone else is asleep. Ethan followed him, the cold biting at his cheeks. It's peaceful. Exactly, Liam said. He turned slightly, the city's light outlining his face. You can breathe up here. Ethan stood beside him, both of them gazing at the distant skyline. The moment felt suspended, simple yet unbearably significant. He wanted to ask why Liam worked nights, why someone so calm seemed to carry the weight of solitude so gracefully. But words felt unnecessary. For the first time in months, Ethan wasn't thinking about unfinished projects or unanswered messages from Michael. He wasn't thinking at all. He was just there, between the sound of the wind and the steady rhythm of Liam's breathing. Minutes passed. The drizzle softened into mist. Liam finally spoke. You're not like most people here. Ethan glanced at him. What makes you say that? You listen, Liam said. Most people talk to fill silence. You let it exist. Ethan didn't know how to respond. The comment struck deeper than it should have. He turned toward the skyline again, blinking against the thin rain. Maybe I'm just tired of noise. Liam nodded slowly. Then you'll understand this place. They stood there until the clock on Ethan's watch blinked past 1 a.m. The world below kept turning, unaware of their stillness, when they finally returned to the elevator, Ethan felt something unfamiliar, a sense of calm, tinged with unease. As the doors closed, he caught Liam's reflection beside his own. Two strangers bound by a quiet that felt dangerously like understanding. When the elevator reached the lobby, Ethan stepped out first. "Thanks for the view," he said. Liam nodded. "Anytime." Ethan started toward the corridor, but paused. "Liam," he said without turning. "You're right. It is beautiful up there." "I'm glad you think so." Ethan walked away, his heart oddly restless. The corridor lights flickered as he unlocked his apartment door. He glanced back once, but the lobby was empty again, only the monitors glowed faintly behind the desk that he closed the door, realizing that what unsettled him most wasn't what had happened, but how much he already wanted to see Liam again. And somewhere below, in the quiet hum of the building, the night continued, unchanged, except for the small secret it now carried. The streetlights glided past in a rhythm that seemed almost deliberate, casting long streaks of light across the dashboard. Ethan Miller kept his hands folded in his lap, trying to anchor himself against the fluttering pulse in his chest. The conversation from earlier still lingered in his mind, each word replaying with a strange insistence. Cameron Hayes drove steadily, the quiet hum of the engine filling the space like a shared heartbeat, gentle and persistent. Ethan glanced at Cameron without thinking. The familiar curve of his jaw, the calm steadiness of his hands on the wheel, it was all the same, and yet different. Something had shifted tonight. The ease between them felt electric, intimate, and Ethan's chest tightened as he realized how profoundly aware he had become of Cameron's presence. It was no longer just family, it was something far more complicated, layered, and fragile. "You've been quiet," Cameron observed, his voice low, careful. The words didn't carry accusation but a subtle concern, almost a test. Ethan wanted to explain, to unburden the mix of guilt, curiosity, and longing, but he found he had no adequate words. The air in the car was heavy with unspoken things, the silence itself a vessel brimming with tension. "I've been thinking," Ethan admitted, keeping his gaze fixed on the street ahead. "About what you said. About perspective, about hidden parts of ourselves." His words trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the intensity of feeling. Cameron's eyes flicked toward him briefly, a small, knowing smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "You mean how some things are easier to share than others?" Cameron asked, voice soft but deliberate, teasing yet intimate. "How what we hide might be the most interesting part." Ethan nodded, heart thudding, aware that the car had become a confessional, a space where walls fell away and masks felt unnecessary. For a moment, they drove in silence again, the only sounds the rhythmic passing of tires over asphalt and the distant hum of city life. Ethan's mind raced. He replayed Cameron's casual touches, the nuances in his voice, the slight inflections that hinted at more than friendship. He felt guilty for the intensity of his awareness, yet unable to deny it. There was something magnetic about Cameron tonight, something that made Ethan want to lean closer, to linger on every word, every gesture. "You ever regret not exploring certain possibilities?" Cameron asked suddenly, his voice carrying a gentle, probing curiosity. Ethan stiffened, aware of the weight behind the question. Possibilities. Futures. Choices. He hesitated, uncertain whether honesty or caution would serve him better. I don't know," Ethan admitted slowly. "Sometimes I wonder what might have been if I'd been braver. Or, more honest with myself." His confession hung between them, a fragile bridge connecting their unspoken thoughts. Cameron's eyes softened, briefly flicking toward him, then returned to the road, as though measuring his reaction. Cameron's voice was quieter now, intimate. "It's strange, how close someone can be, and yet how far apart we feel until a single moment changes everything." Ethan felt the warmth of that statement settle in his chest. It resonated, stirring emotions he hadn't dared confront. It wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was awareness, tinged with something dangerous, exhilarating, and entirely consuming. The ride continued, slower now, deliberate in its pacing. Ethan felt a wave of vulnerability, a strange exposure that left him both unsettled and alive. I don't know if I'm ready to face all of that, he admitted, voice low, almost a whisper. Cameron nodded knowingly, the corners of his eyes crinkling in a subtle, reassuring gesture. I'm not asking for answers tonight, Cameron said gently. I just want you to feel. To notice. To realize there's more to us than what we pretend to be. His words wrapped around Ethan's mind, settling in, impossible to shake. There was a courage in Cameron's presence, an ease with vulnerability that Ethan found simultaneously terrifying and intoxicating. As they approached Ethan Street, the quiet suburban houses looming like sentinels in the dim light, Cameron slowed the car. You okay? He asked, the question simple, yet loaded. Ethan nodded, unsure what okay even meant anymore. His thoughts were tangled, curiosity, attraction, guilt, longing, all intertwined in a knot he could neither untangle nor deny, I think. I will be, Ethan replied carefully. Thanks, for tonight. His voice carried sincerity, tinged with a nervous energy that betrayed more than he intended. Cameron gave a faint smile, the kind that lingered longer than polite, a small acknowledgement of shared understanding. Cameron's hand briefly brushed Ethan's as he reached for the door handle, subtle but deliberate. It was fleeting, a whisper of contact, yet it left Ethan acutely aware of the tension, the attraction, and the unspoken possibilities. The gesture wasn't a promise, but it was acknowledgement, a recognition that the evening had altered something fundamental between them. I'll see you soon, Cameron said, voice low, almost conspiratorial, as if the car itself had been a secret world where ordinary rules didn't apply. Ethan nodded, swallowing the lump of unspoken thoughts lodged in his throat. He watched as Cameron drove away, taillights fading into the darkness, leaving him alone with the lingering warmth and tension of the night. Ethan lingered on the porch, hands gripping the railing, replaying each nuance, the curve of Cameron's smile, the tone of his voice, the casual confidence that hid something deeper. He realized the night had changed everything subtly, irrevocably. The familiarity of family had shifted into something complex, layered, charged with possibility, yet carefully balanced on the edge of boundaries. He leaned against the doorframe, exhaling slowly, trying to reconcile the conflicting emotions. There was guilt, yes, but also a thrilling awareness of attraction, curiosity, and the danger of unspoken desire. Ethan knew that this was only the beginning, a single, delicate step into a world where questions outweighed answers, and every glance or word could carry unforeseen weight. Closing the door behind him, he felt the quiet of his room press against his awareness, contrasting sharply with the intensity of the drive. The night outside was calm, unassuming, yet the memories and emotions from the ride clung stubbornly to his thoughts. For the first time in a long while, Ethan understood that some experiences weren't meant to be neatly categorized or explained, they existed to unsettle, to awaken, and to challenge. He sank onto his bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment in vivid detail. Cameron's presence lingered in his mind like a shadow and a light simultaneously, familiar, yet unsettling, safe, yet thrilling. And as sleep edged closer, Ethan realized that tonight was not an ending. It was a threshold, a subtle shift in understanding, leaving him both haunted and exhilarated, eager to see where the unspoken path would lead next. Word count, 1,000 key takeaways from Section 3, resolves the car ride and emotional tension with a reflective, suspenseful ending, reinforces Ethan's internal conflict, attraction, and moral questioning. Leaves story open-ended for curiosity and potential continuation, fully faceless video compatible, relies on internal monologue, gestures, and atmospheric description.